He's the man behind Qatar's rise on the international stage. Former Emir Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani has died. He'll be remembered as the architect of modern Qatar. What lessons will be learned from his legacy? This is Inside Story. Hey there, I'm Scott McLean. The man known in Qatar as the father Emir has died at the age of 74. Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani ruled from 1995 until 2013, when he stepped aside voluntarily and transferred power to his son. During his reign, Qatar's economy expanded on an unprecedented scale. His vision set the stage for the nation to emerge as a player in the Gulf region and beyond. Sheikh Hamad is credited with overseeing the deep transformations that shaped Qatar for the past 3 decades. We'll discuss the father Emir's legacy in a moment, but first, this report from Imogen Kimber.
Known as the father Emir, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani ruled Qatar for 18 years and oversaw the transformation of the Gulf nation.
We talk about someone who, a leader who actually left a legacy all over the world, not even only in Qatar. He worked really hard to turn Qatar from just a normal country into a prominent and extraordinary country.
He came to power in 1995 and set to work expanding the energy sector. Within a decade, Qatar became the largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. The economy flourished and has continued to grow. Today, the country has one of the highest GDPs per capita in the world. Sheikh Hamad also invested in infrastructure, turning the small desert city of Doha into a flourishing modern hub. At the same time, he established Qatar as an international mediator, positioning it at the heart of negotiations in the region and further afield. In 2008, he brought Lebanese leaders together to broker an end to months of violence. A year later, he oversaw negotiations between Darfur rebel groups and the Sudanese government. Throughout his reign, he ensured Qatar was an important voice in talks between Palestine and Israel. Part of those efforts included the launch of a television channel to tell the Palestinian story. Al Jazeera revolutionized broadcast media in the Middle East. In his own words,
"You've helped shape a new reality in the Arab world, a reality of press freedom, of opinion and counter-opinion. Looking back over the past 10 years, Al Jazeera has transformed the media landscape in the Arab world to such an extent that other news channels are now trying to follow its lead."
Since then, Al Jazeera has grown into an international network, spanning an English news channel and a number of digital platforms.
Is Qatar.
Cementing Qatar's global role, Sheikh Hamad brought the world's biggest sporting event to the Middle East for the first time, with the hosting of the 2022 FIFA World Cup. But perhaps his most remarkable act was to hand over the reins to his son, a seamless transfer of power that ensured stability for the country. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
All right, for more on this, let's bring in our guests. Here with me in studio is Ibrahim Al Ibrahim. He is the former economic advisor at Qatar's Amiri Diwan, the office of the Emir of Qatar. Joining us from London is Andreas Krieg, an associate professor at the School of Security Studies at King's College London. He is also the CEO of the political risk firm Mina Analytica. And also in London is Patrick Theros. He served as U.S. ambassador to Qatar between 1995 and 1998. And is currently a non-resident senior fellow at the Gulf International Forum. Thank you all so much for being here. Mr. Ibrahim, we'll start with you. I wonder if you can just describe for me what Qatar looked like in 1995 when Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani took over ruling the country up until, compared to what it looked like in 2013 when he passed the baton to his son.
It's really a common mistake that people, when they talk about the achievement of Sheikh Hamad, they talk about it as it started in 1995. No, it started before that. He was the deputy emir, but really he had a lot of power at that time to interfere and make a lot of changes in Qatar. So I would say the renaissance of Qatar, which he is the founder of it, of course, started little earlier than maybe 1990, I would say.
Sure. But then what were things like in 1995? I mean, how much progress has been made over those 18 years that he was in charge?
Well, the progress is really unbelievable. If you really talk, of course, we want to say 1995, a lot of things happened, but if you want to know the real progress that happened, it takes time, because we started, for instance, the LNG business in 1997. That we were not even exporting any gas.
Wow.
But the first shipment came to Japan in it took that long, before,
Ambassador Theros, you were ambassador between 1995 and 1998. Can you describe what you remember from that time?
It was a period of fantastic change. Remember, before coming to Doha, I had been I'd been assigned to 7 other Arab countries. And the great surprise that I had first upon meeting Sheikh Hamad, when I first presented credentials, is he told me exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to become America's best friend in the region, and he wanted to be remembered as the person he is the education emir, the person who advanced education in the country, and he wanted to be remembered as the person who made Qatar the freest country in the Gulf. And he accomplished all those things. Some of them are sort of a rolling accomplishment, most of them continued after I left at the end of '98. But he didn't speak much about the buildings, about the physical things. He spoke about how he would transform the country culturally, socially, educationally, and politically.
Professor Krieg, can you just describe maybe Qatar's place in the world politically, militarily, from the 90s through the 18 years that Sheikh Hamad, through his reign over Qatar?
Yeah, I mean, Qatar was and remains a small state. If you look at the society, look at the absence of strategic depth, if you look at the territory, it is by all means a small state. But I think what we've seen during that period of these 18 years that Sheikh Hamad was in power, and obviously, as Mr. Ibrahim already said, the years preceding 1995, we have a period where Qatar went from a small power or a non-existent power to being a small state with quite extensive power. And I think the mistake that a lot of people are making is that they're reducing the achievement of Sheikh Hamad to economic gain, to financial gain, and how much the economy, GDP per capita, has really increased, and that's kind of the metric of success. But when we're actually looking at the wider spectrum of Qatari power during that period, what he tried to do and what he succeeded doing is looking at what Qatar has to offer and how that can be used to generate global influence. And so that's not just the military over these 18 years. I mean, the military was probably arguably never the mainstay of Qatari power, certainly not in the time of Sheikh Hamad. So there's been very little transformation during that period. I think the transformation was obviously economic. It was in energy politics. It was in terms of diplomacy. It was certainly societal as well. But looking at what Qatar had to offer, saying where the advantages are and how these advantages could be exploited to establish Qatar as a sovereign and autonomous country. That's very important as well. Because in 1995, Qatar was, in many ways, a follower. It was piggybacking along Saudi Arabia. It was in the shadows of the bigger brother, in many ways appearing almost like a vassal state. And then 18 years later, it was a country that was sovereign, it was autonomous, and it could make decisions as it saw fit, even when bigger neighbors all around were not necessarily happy with what Qatar was doing. And that sort of strategic autonomy is something that Qatar has achieved in comparison to many other small states in the region that they didn't achieve.
Mr. Ibrahim, please go ahead.
Allow me to make
go ahead.
follow up on what the ambassador said and the professor said. Regarding my first meeting with Sheikh Hamad, was unbelievable. I really was working in the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, and I used to be before working in Kuwait in OAPEC, the Organization of Arab Petroleum Countries, and I felt that I'm going back to the States but I received a letter from his office saying if I can work with him. I didn't think this is, what does it mean to work with the Sheikh, with the Emir? I'm not used to that.
You were skeptical.
And yeah, so I had, in my way I was in Iraq making a presentation on the Arab Energy Conference, and I came, and the first time I met him, I didn't know I meet somebody else, I thought, but I met him. So I expressed my doubt to him. I said, Your Highness, I am not really good maybe for that job, because I say what I want. I don't, I said, he told me that's what I heard about you, and that's the reason I want you.
He wanted you to say what you want.
What you feel, okay? And that was really, I would say,
that sold you.
Meeting the first love. I mean, since then, we're talking about 1988. Our relation continued for a long time.
Okay, so he wanted...
Regarding if you need but the progress,
yeah,
the progress is unbelievable. Maybe the economic progress, nothing, but it is very important, but it's brought with it other kind of changes.
Yeah.
I mean, from almost 2000 to 2014, Qatar grew about 20% per year.
That's wild.
This is unbelievable growth. It's never happened, even when you talk about China and all these, it never happened. So that is the progress. But then that brought with it really educational. I mean, you know what Education City now, and
yeah.
it was a dream that this is possible.
Yeah.
And the change that has been made, it was gradual. It wasn't forced on the people. It was gradual. For instance, when you wanted to have a co-ed university, he didn't say Qatar University has to be co-ed. He brought with, of course, the support, I have to say that, the great support of Sheikh Hamad, because they work together very well on this. And that said, okay, it is co-ed, you have a choice. You want your girls to go there, fine. You don't want, it's up to you. And most people were skeptical about this change. It's not will happen. But now, if you look at the Education City, the girls are more than the boys. So this is a change.
Yeah.
It was not forced on the people. It was worked with the people, to come.
Yeah.
And that is really the trick. I would not say the trick. That's it happened in every aspect of life, social, human, you name it.
I'm interested in what you said about, he wanted to hear your opinion. He wanted to know genuinely what you thought, whether it was what he wanted to hear or not. And on that note, Ambassador, it was in the 90s when the Sheikh Hamad took over. He scrapped media censorship. And not only did he do that, but he launched Al Jazeera, which is the reason that we're all sitting here today. Right. And obviously, Al Jazeera has gone on to do some of the most consequential journalism of this era. And I just wonder, why do you think that a Gulf monarchy would want to launch the first real independent news channel in the Arab world?
Because in Sheikh Hamad's eyes, it was missing. That was one of the things. Sheikh Hamad loved Qatar, but he also was a very strong Arab. He felt that he was an Arab. He felt he owed what he could do for the Arab world as a whole. And one of the great things missing was free and independent journalism. And I remember when the first proposals were made for Sheikh Hamad to establish Al Jazeera, and I went to the opening dinner. I believe there was a ceremony for the opening of Al Jazeera, and some people gave speeches about how this is going to be uncensored media spreading through the Arab world. And as I said earlier, this is the end of a career of 36 years spent almost entirely in the Arab world, and you can understand my sort of disbelief that this would ever happen. And my reporting cable that the next day after the opening ceremonies basically ended was, I doubt very much that any of this will come to pass, but a warning that if it does, this is going to be the biggest headache for an American ambassador in the region. That was absolutely correct.
That's so interesting. Professor Krieg.
It wasn't the most problem for the U.S. It was a problem for Qatar too.
Yeah,
Jazeera. We got too many problems because of its being open.
Of course, the neighbors didn't necessarily like Al Jazeera. That's an understatement.
And many people said, why do we need this Jazeera to bring all the trouble to us? And really, Al Jazeera stayed, and now many Arab countries are trying to imitate it, but I don't think they are so successful.
But they can't imitate it because it's missing that one last thing, which was the freedom.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes. Professor Krieg, I found it so interesting during the Arab Spring, there's so many countries of this region that were trying to crack down on protesters, but in many ways it was Al Jazeera that was siding with them. They defied a broadcast ban in Egypt, showed the world the scale of the demonstrations there, ultimately led to the overthrow of that government. And so I just wonder why you think that Qatar was so fundamentally different under Sheikh Hamad than all of the other countries in this region.
It's an interesting one. I mean, Sheikh Hamad, as we already established, he was a disruptor, but he was also revolutionary. And part of that revolutionary spirit also came, obviously, from his wife, Sheikh Hamad, whom herself has a very revolutionary history, family history as well. Both of them had an Arab nationalist vision, a vision for all Arabs, the idea of not just emancipating the home crowd, as in Qatari society, but also having a greater vision for government for the people. And that's kind of where Hamad started out first domestically, of saying we need more government by the people for the people, even in an autocratic environment, rather than a direct sort of democracy by the ballot box. But he had the idea that the Arab world was lagging behind purely because authoritarian dictatorships were not delivering for the people, but delivering for their own pockets and for themselves. So the Arab Spring, when it came around, was an opportunity to actually bring that vision that he always had to the table and actually make a difference. And also, I think in many ways, Sheikh Hamad, for me, is an embodiment of that old sort of Qatari narrative of the Kaaba al-Madiyum, the idea that it becomes some sort of safe haven for the dispossessed and for the underprivileged. In many ways, Al Jazeera was created based on that logo of a voice for the voiceless. So when the Arab Spring came about, it was, and Hamad said it in various interviews where he said, we're siding with the people. There was an issue with that, obviously, is that by just siding with the people, that in itself was not a strategy, but it kind of fit the narrative and the values, what he believed in. The question is, was it implementable or not? And that's probably where it ultimately failed, the Qatari position. But he himself believed in it. He had a value system which was fundamentally different from his competitors or his other royal families in the region, and he wasn't scared to rock the boat. And he was, unlike his predecessor, his father, not as cautious, and he was kind of prone, together with Hamad bin Jassim, his prime minister, to take a risk. And that fundamentally really boosted the Arab Spring in the early years.
Mr. Ibrahim, can I just...
I have a comment on this.
Please, go ahead, and then I'll ask you my question.
No, and this is very important because the Syrian revolution that happened, his support was unbelievable. Most countries start to make legitimacy to Bashar al-Assad and things like that. But Qatar is the only country, really, in the Arab countries that did not even try to change, despite all the pressure on them. And from the Arab countries and other countries, he never wavered on this. So Qatar's support to the Syrian revolution, and I think most Syrians now appreciate what was happening.
So in 2011 or 2012, I'm interested in, Sheikh Hamad gave an interview to a U.S. news program called 60 Minutes, and he was asked about Qatar's foreign policy, and the correspondent asked, quote, "It often seems like the basis of your foreign policy is to be friends with everyone." Sheikh Hamad's response was, quote, "Don't you think this is a good policy for a small country?" I mean, does that kind of summarize what his vision of foreign policy was then and still is now?
It really summarized, because he doesn't want any enemy, He had friendship with Fidel Castro. But also he had friends with many other kingdom, So he just think that the world really should be different from what it is. We don't have to fight with each other. And if you look at the Qatar policy now, it's always try to make that peace in the world is so important to them, to the extent, even though it's a small country, but at the same time trying its best to bring up some safety and peace to the world.
Yeah. Ambassador, Sheikh Hamad was, and Qatar, I suppose, was involved in the decision to enforce a no-fly zone over Libya. And in 2011, President Obama met with the Emir, the father Emir, then the Emir, and said he expressed his appreciation, quote, of the leadership that the Emir has shown when it comes to democracy in the Middle East. And I just wonder how unusual it is for the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, to be praising a Gulf monarch on progress in bringing democracy.
One is, I think that was very much Sheikh Hamad's declared end state for the Arab world. He knew that it couldn't develop like it did in the United States or in the West, but just after I got there, we had an opening of the formal opening of the Majlis al-Shura, which was then the advisory council predating the current parliament. And he gives a speech and in which he says, this is one of the periods of greatest weakness in the Arab world because Arab governments deny to their people the right to participate and to contribute. And at that point, all my Arab colleagues on each side had notes out writing the note of protest for what he said. But this was his vision. His vision was, the Arab world had a great moment in which the Arab people, in his view, perhaps a little romanticized, but I don't think that romanticized, were people who participated in the decision-making. And that's the way he ran Qatar. He ran Qatar by consensus. His decision to create a municipal council, which finally came to pass, took something like 3 years between the time he birthed the idea and the time it came into being. And the first couple of times, he would send a law to the advisory council to say, this is how I'd write the law, how I'd like to see the law written. And the council, used to the old days, would say, yes, sir, stamp it, send it back. And he would send it back to them again and say, no, you don't understand. I really want your input. And it took about 3 years to develop the final law for the municipal council, because he had a good feeling for how his people would go, how far they were willing to go. One day he told me, he said, democracy comes in various forms, but in the final analysis, democracy it allows the participation of the people in the decisions made on their behalf.
Professor, sorry, finish your thought, please, Ambassador.
Yeah, and it means that the Emir has to listen to bad news.
Professor, when Sheikh Hamad stepped down, passed power to his son, the current Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, how unprecedented was that? How unusual was that, especially in this part of the world, for power to be passed on in that way?
Absolutely unusual, but I think on a day like this, as sad as the day is, I think it was the right decision not to wait for an elderly statesman to be succumbed by illness and then out of nowhere, having to transfer power to a crown prince who was ill-prepared. I think this transition period, and it taken a couple of years from 2013 to obviously where we are today, to see Sheikh Tamim actually establishing his own rule and building his own sort of Qatar. In many ways, we're now in the Qatar of Tamimism, which is very different from the Hamadism of the time and the era that we're describing. But it was very unusual. But it also meant, Hamad was someone who was willing to not just push back coercively against external pressures and developments. He didn't want to be driven by developments. He wanted to also shape developments. And I think the way that he was willing and able to transit power, give power to his son in a consensual way at a time of his choosing, was also a way of him showing that he didn't want to be forced out or succumbing to external pressures, but doing it on his own terms and preparing his son for a long period of transition. And obviously the son had been crown prince for a period before that. But it was certainly unusual in that way. Yeah. And it had allowed Qatar to continue down on the path. Although I do think that Qatar today, 13 years on from that transition of power, is a slightly different country. Yeah. And now Tamim is very much in the driver's seat. And, over the last couple of years, we see Mohammed and also Sheikh Hamad being more in an advisory position, but outside of the formal institutions of politics, more within the council of the family.
Mr. Ibrahim, you were there at that time. I just wondered,
It is very unusual, I would say.
But what went into the thinking,
in the Arab world?
Yeah.
I don't think there is one, maybe a precedent in Sudan or something. But in general, the ruler of the countries, if they stay ruler until they die.
Of course.
I mean, we don't want to give examples.
But what went into the thinking, though, to make that decision to pass the baton to his son?
It's not the thinking. You have to really think of the man himself. The man himself really love people. And loving people means there are many ways of doing this. It doesn't have to be, as the ambassador said, it's through democracy, because sometimes democracy doesn't mean the rule for the people. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's his mentality, really. He loves people. He's an unusual man. He's inspirational, yes. To everybody. I mean, he is a man, when you sit with him, you never feel that he brings down himself to you. Nobody feels at all that he is sort of, it feels exactly like you are with your friend. I mean, I stayed with him long time. I really usually you don't enjoy to meet your boss, right?
Yeah.
Some people don't. I always enjoy meeting him, So he is the kind of man that you really, somehow you can never hate him.
Yeah.
Nobody hates him. I mean, you bring anybody, let him meet him, he will like him.
And of course, my condolences to Mr. Ibrahim and to our guests, Professor Andreas Krieg in London and Ambassador Patrick Theros. Thank you so much for being here, gentlemen. We really appreciate the discussion.
It's a pleasure.
Nice meeting you,
Dr.
Ambassador.
Ibrahim, I hope to see you soon.
I hope so. Nice meeting you too.
And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that's it from me, Scott McLean, and the entire team here in Doha. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in just a moment. Stay tuned.